less about Scarlatti's life than any other keyboard composer of comparable genius and achievement. The chance events of history almost seem to have conspired to keep his life and his work shrouded in mystery. For example, all of the manuscripts of his sonatas have disappeared. So check your attics, your basements, and if you find any, call me. During his youth, Domenico was in the shadow of his famous father, Alessandro. At the Spanish court, Domenico was ultimately overshadowed by his superstar countryman, the singer who was known as Farinelli. Even now, there seems to be an attitude among some musicians that Domenico Scarlatti is not worthy of our attention. I have been to many places in the world today where the music of Scarlatti is held in low esteem, considered freakish or trivial, and sometimes compared unfavorably to the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. This attitude and the comparison with Bach are clearly ridiculous. In many ways, Scarlatti's music is as different from Bach as humanly possible, especially given the fact that the two composers were exact contemporaries and had so many parallels in their lives. To take one of the most obvious examples, Bach spent his life trying to avoid parallel fifths, the prime directive of counterpoint. Most of the time he succeeded, or at least managed to hide them. These are parallel fifths. Here's Scarlatti's musical opinion about parallel fifths. He writes the forbidden fifths, not just once, but in true Scarlatti fashion, 4 times in a row. For Scarlatti, creating music was not about following the rules of counterpoint. This is all the more amazing when we consider the fact that Scarlatti was a master of counterpoint from his early days as a composer for the Vatican. Even in his 60s, we find Scarlatti criticizing composers who wrote bad counterpoint. In 1752, Domenico suggested that the Duke of Alba keep the music to one of Scarlatti's arrangements of vocal pieces. "Excellency, please keep the original parts in my arrangement so that other musicians, if they even bothered to take the time, might use my score as a model to study the true style and rules of writing counterpoint. These days, very few composers can write correct counterpoint, even though I hear really mediocre compositions being praised to the skies." Scarlatti knew all the rules of composition, but he was the first composer in history to go on record to insist that the only rule that really mattered was this: the ear must find the music pleasing. As to the comparison with Bach, here are 2 compositions that begin with very similar ideas. Here is the beginning of the first one. Here's the beginning of the second one. When we begin the first piece, we know that we are playing perfect 2-voice counterpoint written by a master. This is Johann Sebastian Bach. When we begin the second piece, we seem to be playing a 2-part invention, but later in that same piece, we hear this. Somehow we ended up in Spain at a bullfight. This can only be Domenico Scarlatti. We could not have more divergent paths of composition or different conceptions of what music is. Scarlatti limited his composition almost entirely to the medium of a keyboard. It was this chosen limitation that drove Scarlatti to the endless exploration of the possibilities of what a keyboard virtuoso could do. The result was hundreds of great works for keyboard. Unfortunately, most of these pieces are rarely performed. It is time to change the silly idea that Scarlatti's music must compare with Bach's music. We perpetuate a crime against Scarlatti's genius by continuing to compare him to Bach or any other composer. In these videos, we have seen Scarlatti as the first great composer of sonatas for the piano, as a visionary romantic composer, and as the first great Spanish keyboard composer. I sincerely hope that these videos will help you to come to a deeper appreciation for this magnificent music. And remember Scarlatti's words to all who studied his sonatas. I hope you will find these pieces agreeable. Don't criticize them too much. Show yourself more human than critical, and you will increase your own delight. Vivi felice. May you live in happiness.